Hello, Wade Cox here, and welcome to the Ski with Wade podcast. I've been involved with this sport of water skiing for over 40 years now. I was fortunate enough to be a professional, and now I'm a full-time water ski coach. Today's guest and I will be talking about water skiing. We'll also be talking a little bit about travel and maybe a little about life as well. Thanks for joining us today. Ski with Wade, cut more rope. Hey guys, welcome to Wade's World. It's my privilege, my honor to welcome my guest, Mr. Sammy Duvall. We'll get to his resume in just a moment because it's going to take a while. So go to I got new merch, Ski with Wade. Go to the website, skiwithwade.com. You can check it out. Make your orders. I also have HO gear. You can buy tubes, skis, vests, gloves, boat, whatever you need for your boat. You check out my tour when I'll be cruising in your area of the country, and any of my old podcast or vlogs will be uploaded to there. So now let's go to Sammy. So if you want to interrupt me, I may come to you, but this is quite amazing. 13 U.S. Masters Championships. Like, it's a big deal, Sammy, for people to get invited once, right? Just once, okay? 8 U.S. Open titles, 7 Moombas, and you probably got some 7 stories about not winning Moomba.
And plenty of broken bones. Yes, yeah, plenty of that.
Some long, not so good flights home, right?
Correct.
So 8-time, this is wicked impressive, 8-time U.S. Pro Tour season jump champion. That's impressive, man. That is unbelievable. More than 80 professional victories. 6-time world jump record holder. You took the world record was your first one 205?
That's correct.
In 1988?
Yes.
Okay.
Look at you.
Oh yeah, your last one 220?
Correct.
So I did the math. That's about 7 percentage points. So he took the world record. So let's talk about sprinting. If you took the 100-meter dash and you took almost 10% off, that's almost a second.
I like that.
So think about that. That's sort of what a quantum leap that this guy took, jumping, and then his competitive nature was sort of second to none. This is I got some of this off your Wikipedia page and some off USA Waterski, but in 1979 was your first U.S. Worlds representing the U.S. Waterski team?
Well, in 79, that was my first year of actually serious pro tournaments. Okay. In that first year, it was kind of set me on the path for the rest of my life.
And he was 17 years old. So then he goes on to do something that's unprecedented, and it's kind of hard to fathom. The World Championships, if you know in water skiing, is held 2 years, more like an Olympics type event. So Sammy goes on to, as a 19-year-old in 1981, to win the world overall title. Did you win jump that year?
I did not.
83 world overall champion, 85 world overall champion, and then 87, and I'm going to get like goosebumps talking about it. It was like, it's the greatest single moment in water skiing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It gives me goosebumps still today.
No, man. So I'll set the picture. The U.S. team and the World Championships at that point it's almost sort of revolved back around to that in the modern day era, because pro skiing hadn't really taken off all the way yet. This is 87. It's been a couple years, but the Pro Tour is sort of in its infancy. So
I think it had been about 2 seasons, right? 85, 86, and then
maybe
87.
84 was the first year. So yeah. So this representing the team, I mean, my dad and I, that's all we trained our whole life was make the USA water ski team, go to the Worlds, man. And because everything else would just fall into place for you if you got to that point. So by this point, you would be a 27-year-old with a absolute bucket load of pressure, and you're battling your nemesis at the time, Mike Hazelwood.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
And you had to do 2 sort of unprecedented things at the time to do. You had to jump, I think it was 194 plus to win the jump event.
Your memory is very good. Yes.
And he goes 197 first jump.
Yep.
And second jump, well, then the story was you had to go more than 197 to win the world overall title, which would be the fourth in a row that we talked about. So, and your PB at the time was 200?
And that was behind the outboard. So my personal best was 200 behind when we had the Yamaha outboards running on the Pro Tour.
So explain that. There was more torque.
Oh, yeah. So, and at the time when we switched over, there was a great guy from Yamaha who really loved skiing, and Rob Shirley from Mastercraft connected with them, and they started building. First off, the boats were for, had barefoot Mastercrafts, right? And so then they developed off that hull design and different engine. And so we were, as the Pro Waterski Tour, the Coors Light Tour developed over the years, we ended up going to the outboard.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. It was the jump boats are outboards and the slalom boats are inboards.
Exactly. And what the outboard gave you was there was really more of a rock where the rear end of the boat would kind of shift out with you when you set in for your turn to the ramp. But then going to the ramp, it would shift back to the left. And also it really ramped up power quickly. And so, I had a 200 behind an outboard, but at that point, not behind an inboard.
So Sammy goes on a second jump, 200 on the nose, ties your PB, and wins the world title for not only in jump, but the fourth world overall title. And I saw the shot I think it's still on the wall out at Jack Travers in the
shot.
The shot. Exactly. It's the shot. I mean, this is it. There's the photographer was behind on the home shore near the tower. And the shot is from behind you turning and look to the ramp. And you can just see just how, as our Aussie friends would say, just how bloody late you are.
It was, it was an amazing time. There's been twice in my career that I can recall where my jumping was so on point, so maxed out that, like, leading up to the Worlds, and we were training over there for about 8 days, I think leading to the Worlds, I took 2 sets, and one of the sets I only took 1 jump. So I was right on the borderline of greatness, but also I could sense I could really get hurt here very easily. And so it was like you do all of your cycling, any skier, you go through the cycles and you try to peak out at the perfect time. And for me, that was at the 87 Worlds leading up to it while we were over in England. And then when I set my last jump record at 220, it was the same thing. I mean, I drove to Jack Travers and drove all the way up there and took 1 jump and got back in the car. It's just like, there's only so many so many bullets in the gun. You don't want to shoot them all. But that day, there was so many things that happened, so many subplots. I trained with Mick Neville, the Australian champion, unbelievable guy.
Who was actually the bronze medal on the podium for the overall, correct?
Right. So he was actually leading going into the final rounds, and we were longtime friends. And all the Australians, a lot of them had trained and lived with me when I was in Australia. They host you, and so there were unbelievable friendships. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there was this giant brawl with Mike Hazelwood's father, Morris, on the dock, and my sister.
I mean, guys, if you don't know this, all of the sort of that next generation, we grew up with this story. Like, no, you don't understand, like what was going on at the starting dock.
It was like nothing I had ever been a part of, and it was ugly. It was raw, and it was just win at all cost, right? And so
drop the gloves like in hockey. Let's go.
He was shoving my sister. He was trampling all over my equipment. Back in the day in the 80s, I mean, there's no way to code it. When you went to Europe, especially when you were in England, you had to be so much better than what you needed to be to win. I mean, that was just, we had the Peter Stuyvesant.
Plus, I witnessed, and I started going over in the early 90s. Yeah, you weren't necessarily a fan favorite showing up with the American flag.
No. And it's just kind of like World Cup soccer, right? I mean, the British fans love their athletes, and at the same time, I trained with Mike Hazelwood for many years. We lived together for a few years.
Shared the same coach with Jack Travers.
Yep. Yeah. And so, we had a personal relationship, and you can't control your parents. I mean, it's not Mike's fault, but it was ugly, right? And so, I'll never forget Bob Lapoint jumping over the fence and running down the dock and putting Morris Hazelwood in a chokehold. They put him in the death grip on the drug him off, and our coach.
Hey, so this is on the starting dock at the World's at the jump final.
Right.
At Thorpe Park. And if you're a youngster and you haven't seen the shot, go find the shot and see how many people are on both shorelines. It's unbelievable to see that.
It is. I think that Sunday was over 20,000, and it was just an electric time.
Oh, I could imagine. I've skied there, and it's a natural amphitheater on both sides.
Yes.
And so everyone just had a nice grassy place on the beach, and I mean, you could just see there wasn't a spot left.
Yeah, it's like a player's course on the PGA. It's meant for viewing, and they built that for viewing. And I would say it's one of the top sites in the world. But it was a amazing weekend. I think about it often. In my office before, the photographer who took that had sent it to me, and so that shot's floated around in a few places. Princess Ski Club. Gothfield Lakes there. Jack's got one. I have one. And I saw at the Worlds this year, a lot of the jumpers were posting that angle because it's an awesome angle.
You'll see it on my social media platforms. Yeah, it pops up, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's part of the reason I want to ski. I mean, but I met you you wouldn't remember it, but you were 1980 Nationals in Tyler. And that's the first time I saw the jump skis crossed up.
Oh, yeah.
And Sammy fired up, and it was wicked cool. So let's fast forward to 84, and you were with Eagle Wetsuits.
Yes.
And there was a Joel Brookshire,
correct,
his owner,
yep.
wanted you to come in and sort of chat with all the junior teamers because, we were, trying to get sponsors and wear the jumpsuits and stuff. And my dad watched you come in, like, right when the meeting was going to start, like 5 minutes before, not 20 minutes before, but you walked around and you shook everyone's hand in the room. And
wow,
my dad says to me after I was 15, he goes, "You see the way Sammy worked that room?" He walked straight up to everybody, looked them straight in the eye and said, "Hey, my name's Sammy." And I was like, yeah, he did, didn't he? So that was... because my next sort of deal is sponsors. How big, we just talked about how big the Pro Tour is getting. It only got bigger, sort of 88, 89 when I was just coming on. We were having 10 events and our sponsors were key. So I already know yours. He had Kidder, Mastercraft, O'Neill, After the Eagle, and Oakley.
And Coors Light.
Yeah, and every kid in America wanted those sponsors, and Sammy had them all. And we watched you... I mean, I watched you talk to a security guard. We had the old VIP, back when we needed a security guard for our...
clear the space.
For our space for the skiers. I watched you walk straight up to, "Hey, buddy, what's up, man?" And you had remembered him from the year before. It was the same guy. And I'm like, okay, I got to work on my people skills. So, yeah. So,
and you did, I guess.
No,
you're
I credit some of mine to Tommy Phillips.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
He was already like, "Man, you just do what Sammy does."
He was your mentor, right?
He was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was one of a kind, right? And he was before his time.
Yeah.
And he didn't sugarcoat anything.
No.
He called it like it is,
exactly.
right? So when he talked to you, you knew.
When he was Herb's nephew, Herb's cousin. And so you worked for Denny for all those years. And I skied for Denny when I was a kid because I wanted to be on the same team with you and Carl.
That's
and,
awesome.
Karen Roberts. And so, I only ever skied for Denny and then Herb.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, you had
HO forever, right?
A bunch of good years with Denny, huh?
20.
20 years.
Yeah. At the end of my career, we started Duvall skis, right? And so when we actually did that, Denny helped me, and he produced our skis, and I designed them, and then he helped me build the tooling and the molds, and so we had he signed me when I was 15, and then he, at the same time, right after that, he signed Carl, and all the Robert's family. So at the time, they had the stable, right, and the red line graphite, and Sue Lipple goes
7 years on it.
Yep, yeah, she won. She won the world title on it, and there was just a lot of momentum during the late 70s all the way into the 90s.
Well, and both those two guys, Herb passed away a few years ago. Denny's still with us, but they were just so enthusiastic about young skiers and helping them, because they saw ultimately, well, if this guy stands on the podium, I'm going to be able to sell skis. If I'm a salesman, I can sell skis if my guy's at the top of the podium.
Absolutely.
And Herb would just tell me, you go win the Masters, I'll sell all these damn skis. Well, it was sort of a joke, but we knew it. You know?
I will, one of the defining things of my career, I look back at different milestones, right? And, I did a lot of boat shows for a lot of years, right? With Mastercraft and Kidder, in the off season. I mean, there was a period where I was traveling 35 weekends a year between.
In January, February, March, you're going to Detroit, Chicago, Philly, where it's
San Francisco,
sub temperatures. We're coming from sunny Florida.
Yeah, no, that's a whole nother story. There's not enough time for that. But I can't believe, even to this day, I meet people and they're like, God, I bought a red line graphite when you were on it. It's just, I still got it. And I'm like, no, don't be scared of that thing anymore.
No, park it. But no. It's so the next thing I want to talk about is two things sort of shaped my life and my skiing. Was one of them was, I'd already met you now, and I was skiing at Travers. This would have been maybe 87 or so, 86, 87. And I watched you ride your jump skis, and you went over the ramp, but I didn't need to see you go over the ramp because you pulled out for a 3/4 cut at Sunset. A triple cut at Sunset Lakes. So you hop the wakes. You're only maybe 15 feet outside the right wake, and you hop the wake. You landed, snow plowed, buried the tips, hopped the wake, buried your right ski, and then shot up about 30 feet in front of the boat for the 600. Snow plowed, same deal, hopped the wakes, landed, buried your left ski, shot up in front of the boat like 30 feet. And at that point, I'm like, I don't ever need to try to do this again, because this guy is so
Is that when you became a specialist?
No, this guy is so much better than I'll ever imagine being. And it was just the way you rode your skis. It was like they say about Kelly Slater, he's one with the water and one with his board, because they got a mesh. And I saw that. And so was it from all the time on the water, maybe with your dad? Let's talk about your dad and Camille growing up.
Well, I truly believe that, you look at the athletes today in the sport of skiing, it's kind of recycled, right? Because first it was like, oh, you need to be 3 events or 2 events. And then specialists came along.
My era was all about being a specialist.
Right. Yeah. And then there's amazing athletes now that are back to doing 3 events that are like a specialist more or less in 1 or 2 events, which is all world, and it's the evolution of any sport. But when I was so small, I started skiing when I was 4, competing when I was 5, and started jumping when I was 6, right?
What was your first nationals?
1972 would have been Seattle.
All right. And then Green Lake?
Is that what it's called?
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to check. Yeah.
It's so long ago, I can't remember the name.
What about your first national championship?
1974, and that would have been, I believe, at Callaway Gardens. Yeah. And in the period back then, getting an invitation to the Masters was a big deal, right? So I saw my dad jump at Callaway Gardens, not in the Masters, but my mom and dad were active skiers. They were in the Anderson Ski Club in South Carolina. I'm from Greenville, which is right by Clemson, where the ski club was on Lake Hartwell. And my earliest memories are getting up and I would never, nor Camille would ever be where we what we were able to achieve, like many families, because your parents, right? And so my parents drove, we lived about 35 miles away, and my mom would drive us in the morning, and we would train all day and come back and rest, and my dad would try to leave work early, and we'd drive back down at 4 o'clock, train till dark, and then drive back, and we'd do it again the next day, you know? So, but yeah, so I spent a lot of time at Callaway Gardens, and you know, getting that master's ticket, there was no junior masters. There was no, you had to earn your way to a very few coveted spots, right? As an adult skier, and so I was able to go. I think my first masters I was 16, and maybe 79. Yeah.
So same sort of your well-roundedness in water skiing. We already talked about off the water. Your trick skiing was, I wrote right here, funky tricks, because you were doing a fourth wake 5.
Yes.
And if you're not a trick skier, I'm speaking a foreign language here. But Sammy did some stuff, and you also did a wake line 5 front.
Yes.
Out of a line back position from outside to end.
Correct. And I also had a 540 front to back. You know, and so.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I was doing both. Yeah.
And then you did 2 wake 7s.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, I learned the flip from Ricky McCormick, right? And then at the Masters, I threw it in after a pass on the way
I saw you
in.
do it at the 81 team trials after you stood up. You did a flip going back to the dock, and we just lost our minds. Like, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Well, you know, I did it enough that at the time I'm like, you know what, I need to put this in the run, and the points were, you know, the top points at the time.
And it took sort of too long to do it, right? For the points given at the time.
Yeah. It just, you know, and so I just said, I'm going to open up with it, and that's it. And just do it right out. And either you're going to nail it or you're not.
Sink or swim.
Yeah. Sink or swim. And so, I was pretty confident in that. And, you know, I look today at the trick skiers and the amount of trick combinations, and I can remember trying, you know, backflips, full twisting, and it was hard. I mean, you know, and to see how they do it today, it makes it look so easy. I know it's a lot of core strength and a lot of energy, you know, they put out, but at the time, no one was doing it. So it was a good thing. And Ricky McCormick, you know, is obviously older than me, but, you know, he was kind of my first mentor. And so I was seeing him do
Tricky Ricky.
He was doing crazy things on 2 skis, you know, when they had 2 trick skis. So he had half of his first pass on 2 skis, and he was.
And they would kick off. Yep.
And he was doing
right into line tricks.
He did a lot of step over line tricks, and so that was probably one of my first, you know, combinations. And I grew up skiing against Corey Picos, and we traded a few junior boys trick records along the way. And I was like, you know, that this guy is going to be amazing. I'm going to have to up my game. And so even though we were on the team together, you know, he was there as a trick specialist earning points for the team. You know, my weakest event was always slalom, you know, and trick skiing. You know, I got some seconds in some of the worlds. And
no, you know, I was going to say when the world record was not at 10,000 points yet, you were tricking 9,000. You were that close to the world record. Same with Carl, who's maybe a whisper behind you. But I had my work cut as I was 16-year-old. I'm like, well, man, I'm tricking 8 or 85, and it's not enough. I'm starting to run 38, and it's not enough. Yeah, because then I had to jump really far. You know. You guys
put a lot of pressure.
So good. Yeah.
But you know, it's one of those life decisions. Like for me, our first child was born was Austin, and as you remember, you know, I made a commitment to my family. Like Sue and Austin went with me everywhere. I mean, wherever I went, Australia, whatever tournaments, unless it was a quick trip to Europe, whatever, I brought them with me. And Austin grew up, you know, on the banks, like a lot of skiers, you know, have kids, you know, has done. But I made the decision, I can't remember exactly what year it was, to just stop tricking because the Pro Tour at the time only had slalom and jump. And it's just like, you know, as everyone knows, trick takes an enormous amount of time. And so by eliminating that, at that time, there was really like maybe 2 to 3 overall tournaments left a year at the most. So I'm like, I'm going to carve out all this time for my family to go, you know, I got to learn new tricks all winter.
Get up, fall.
Well, yeah, all winter long,
fall.
right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You grind it out all winter. And so, you know, it was a great decision because it I had more time with my son and my wife, and at the same time, I think it ended up helping me on the Pro Tour in slalom, because I would sneak in here and there, into the Final Four or whatever, and definitely helped my jumping.
Well, so we're going to talk about that next. So Sammy was just saying he wasn't very good, or slalom was your weakest event. So 1988 Pro Tour Finals, Wichita on the river. It had already been really bad the year before in 87.
Yeah.
So the weather's not bad. We're right downtown, and I made the top 8. This is my first full season on the Pro Tour. There were 10 events in 88, and the Pro Tour Finals was only the top 8 got invited.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's huge. You got a big bag of Coors Light goodies and all this cool stuff, only if you made the top 8. So I do that, and the Saturday round, we didn't have a Friday round because we're already in Saturday.
Yep.
So Saturday, I leave a lot of chicken on the bone, as they would say. Yeah, it didn't go as good as it could have, and you absolutely ripped it up. You make it to the Sunday Pro Tour Finals at the finals, and it's Shea Lander ended up winning. I think he beat Carl, but irrelevant of whether you got third or fourth, you remember they used to make a big deal of the prize money at the end of the year, same as on the golf list. So you beat me out of 6th spot by $50, I think, for the year. And
you must have kept a little chip on my shoulder book.
Exactly, you did. I'm like this tall, skinny, slalom skinny. You just looked at me. Yeah, I got you, but I'm like, I can't believe that. So, I wanted to beat you so bad in slalom after that. I'm like, I don't care if he's awesome.
Well, you probably beat me every year after that and everything.
Well, yeah, because I was mad. I'm like, man, even the overall guys are beating me.
That's the way to wear the chip. That's the way to do it.
So I was going to bring up the golf a couple minutes ago, but let's talk about that, because you were fortunate enough to play not only a bunch of golf, but you got to play with Mark O'Meara, John Cook, all these dudes on the Pro Tour, right?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, Orlando in the 80s and into the 90s, it was like the place to come, right? And everybody's heard of the name David Ledbetter. He set up shop, and he was coaching Nick Price from South Africa, like David Ledbetter. And Nick Price became the number 1 player in the world for maybe 3 consecutive years straight. I mean, he was almost unbeatable.
Yeah, like maybe 92, 93, 93,
yeah,
94.
he was on fire, right? And so my son and Mark's son grew up together from kindergarten. They're still friends. They have a company with another lifelong friend called Duvin Design, and there we go.
You're wearing the shirt, yeah, rocking some love there, yeah.
And they've built this business, and they just did collab with Puma and also with Orlando City, and they have musicians, and so lifelong friends are now successful in business, which is cool. But I got to play a ton of golf with Mark. We were close friends. I just talked to him on Father's Day and sent him I was playing with Sean and sent him a video of Sean, because he can step on it and put it out there about 330, 340 on a string with about a 2-foot deviation offline, right? And but also, through Mark, I got to play with Tiger Woods a few times and John Daly, and as it turned out, a lot of the players ended up coming to like between Bay Hill and Isleworth, and then later on, a lot of the international players ended up at Lake Nona. So
no, I remember Sammy and then Andy had a relationship as well with some of the guys, because you guys played some golf together. And next thing I remember, standing there at the Portland Pro Tour, and Mark O'Meara and John Cook walk up. And it was like a day off for them, because they were playing, I think it was called the Peter Stuyvesant back in the day.
Yeah.
A midweek sort of pro-am.
Yeah, Peter Jacobson put together.
And they came out to watch us on Sunday, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And they're like asking me, chatting with me, and I'm like, guys, I got to go ski, but I just want to hang out and chat with you guys.
Well, that's a very positive story, but I'll throw in a negative story for you. You might remember when they had a Pro Tour event in Charlotte, in Michigan, right? And so they were playing in Detroit, and Mark called me and he said, "Hey, what's your timeline tomorrow? We're going to have some time in the afternoon. We got an early tee time. We'll come over and watch it," because I don't remember how close the course was, but it wasn't far. So they showed up, and leading into that tournament, I was right on the edge of like breaking a record. I mean, I was, again, dicey, right? And I had a great first jump, and the second jump, I just, bid it hard. And it was embarrassing, right? I mean, they're my close friends, but you just don't want to go, look, shit happens, and it happened, right? I mean, it is what it is. But when I came up, and I was a little woozy, and I was supposed to be doing an autograph session in maybe the Kidder booth or something, and they kept announcing for me to get to the booth, and then some guy comes down and starts giving me a hard time about it. And Mark's like, he can't even move. He can't even lift his arm, much less just give him a break, right? Yeah, right. So, but he was a good friend, and they like, he liked to ski as well. They lived on the Butler chain, and and I still stay in contact with Cookie and see him from time to time. But a lot of great golfers. I saw a lot of amazing shots and a lot of really good golf standing next to him.
Well, my first Sammy golf story was I just saw him in Mastercraft. This was the spring photo shoot or early summer of '93.
Okay.
And Summit House, Cypress Gardens. If you did the Mastercraft photo shoot, the Summit House.
Yes.
So we're there at, whatever, probably 4 a.m. the first day, whatever. It was a full day. And then you asked me, hey, bring your clubs tomorrow. So I did. And man, I was an absolute beginner, but I show up and I'll never forget, you had a Lexus Coupe.
The white one with the cream.
Yeah. So I
love that car.
So here, I'm just a kid. I'm brand new on a tour. I've just signed a Mastercraft. I throw my golf clubs in the back of Sammy's car, and we're off to go play golf. And I could have shot over a 200 that day, and I didn't care. I just want to hang out.
I remember that day go playing. Yeah,
we played it was it called Bay Tree or something?
Well, it's right around the corner from where the USA Waterskier building headquarters used to be.
Clickety clack.
Scott Clack was there with us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now that, and then my second golf story, because I know we played other times, but there's 2 specific times where Steve Cockrum.
Yeah.
This would have been the same 93, maybe 94 at the latest. So we call up, or somehow we come over to the west side, and there's me and we call him Ralphie.
Yeah.
So we play against you guys at the Windermere Club.
Yes.
Against you and Andy.
Right around the corner.
Y'all are great golfers, and we sucked. And then we got our butt kicked. They were like,
I remember that day.
We're driving home going, well, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I just got spanked, and just checked the full image at the door because we were terrible. But you guys made it up to us. You said, hey, come back over. And so we go over to the east side of town. You guys met us at Eastwood or wherever.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was a second.
No, did you guys play good? I don't remember that. I don't remember being.
No, I remember this because we were sort of walking up, and I think maybe even you saw the dejected look on my face, like we're going to get crushed. And then I think it was you that said, well, why don't we split this up and you put Andy and I on the same team, and then you played with Ralph,
yeah,
which made it way more of a fair game because
well, you're not competitive.
No, not at all. So no, that was sort of this vivid memory, and I was like, well, he may remember this, he may not, but
I remember the first one, but I'll believe you on the second.
Oh, because I remember the second hole at the Windermere Club. Ralph and I look at each other like, we have no chance. Zero. Okay. So luckily you guys didn't take any money from us. Well, you were nice to us.
We would have given it back. But hey, quick Andy golf story here for you. I think you'll appreciate this. So years ago, when they TPC up in Ponte Vedra in Jacksonville, where they have the Players Championship, and so Mark's like, let's go up and play. So we get up early in the morning. It's Andy, myself, Mark, and one other. I can't remember who it was, but we're on the second hole, and Andy hits it in the trees left, and he's back in there in the woods, and all of a sudden we hear this, and like the shaft, he hit the tree, and the shaft comes flying with the head out into the middle of the fairway where we're standing. It's just like, holy shit, this is bad. And if you knew Andy, he always had these massive calluses on his hand, but he was super competitive. So whenever we would end up playing with the pros, he would like go for launch angle, missile shots. And so we're like 2 holes later, he tears his glove off and he goes, look, and his hand's just gushing blood because he tore some calluses. It's like, relax that grip just a little bit.
Well, you got to see, I've golfed with Roberge, the same. He's not that great of a golfer, but think how strong the guy is. And
yes.
So water skiers and golf is like not really a good balance because they're so strong that
Upper body.
Yeah, I'm gonna just crush this. So you get. I don't have this written down. You got to tell us a story about when Bob hit the shot back at the guys that were following you.
Oh, well, I guess I've told some stories.
Don't they hit into you?
Yeah. I guess I've told stories like at the Hall of Fame that I shouldn't have told, but I don't really care. So I've never really cared. But this is pretty classic. So we go out and we're, I was with O'Neill wetsuits and clothing for a long time. And I left O'Neill because Pat O'Neill was just like making me crazy. And so I went and I was with Eagle for a few years, and then everything we kissed and made up, and I went back and finished my career with O'Neill. So, their factories were in San Francisco, and so we flew out, and the sports marketing guys took us to play golf. We were down in Pebble Beach. And so, there's Poppy Hills, Spyglass, and Pebble.
So like the three greatest golf courses in the world.
It's pretty all world, yeah. So, and there's also Spanish Bay next door. So we had played, I think maybe Spyglass, my favorite, Spanish Bay, and then we were playing Poppy Hills. So, it's a couple days, everybody's worn down, right? At the 9 holes, we stop and have a couple of tequila shooters, and then we're on the green like 2 holes later, and these guys behind us on the tee box of a par 3, they hit into us on the green. And Bob's like, WTF, from the green to there, and the guys basically, F you. And then it was gloves were off, and the guy starts bolting down off the tee box, and then Bob's like, I can't even say, and he tears off in a freaking full-on run right at the guy, and the guy's about halfway down the hill. Bob's got a full head of steam, and all of a sudden the light flips on. This could cost me my life.
Yeah.
And Bob's got full, arms up, guns out, and
he's 6'3", 225. Yeah. And
moving fast.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the guy starts and his partners, everybody starts running back to the carts, trying to get out of Dodge. It was hilarious. I mean, it's like, of all the etiquette places that this shouldn't happen, here we are.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The hardest courses in the U.S. to get on. Yeah,
yes.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yes. We could have been banned for life, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's switch gears. When was your first pro title? That moment where like you won a jump title or an overall against all the boys.
Well, I think I won a in 2015. It was in Birmingham, and I got to do some other things. But really, the turning point for my career was, if anyone's ever heard of Marine World, it's no longer in existence. But originally, it was in San Francisco in Redwood City, which is kind of right by the airport.
I skied the second version of it in Vallejo.
Yeah. Correct. And both of those sites kind of front to the bay, and so wind and afternoon winds and morning winds are all big issues. And that was the first whip-style jump tournament really that was ever created, right? So
we're not talking whip to the 6. We're talking whip up to the cut to the ramp.
Yeah, I mean, it really tight surrounding area. And in Marine World Africa USA, like around the lake was the Tigers pens, and there's the wind swirling. Very, very, very difficult. And some of the most amazing falls injuries that you'll ever see. And as it happened, I was there in 2015, and that was kind of like, I learned about it, and I came back when I was 16, and actually Bruce Jenner and Mike Adamley were there, and NBC covered it.
Oh, wow.
And it was it was on national TV. Yeah.
Wide World of Sports.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I won, right? And I was against Wayne Grimditch,
who Wayne was the world jump record holder in early 70s. He ran 177
He was
feet,
one of my
180.
heroes. Yeah, 180. And Bob Lapoint, and in that era of the late 70s and into the early 90s, there was, I'd like to know what you think. I would say 9 consistent guys that could win any given weekend. I mean, it was tough, right? Glenn Thurlow, Jeff Carrington. I mean, we just go down the list. Shea Lender, Mike.
Roberts,
Lucky Lowe. I mean, Carl. I mean,
Jeff Carrington.
Yeah. There was no room for error. So to win that was like a big thing for me. And I ended up going on that year, and I won 6 out of the 9 pro events that year when I was 16 years old. And so that's something still to this day I'm very proud about. Yeah. Yeah. It was good.
So who is the toughest competitor that you skied against?
In what event?
Any of them. You just think, well, I heard Lance Armstrong say against about one of his Russian lieutenants who was, basically one of his worker bees.
Yep.
He said that guy's nails.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, I love that. They just said, no, man, it doesn't matter, rain or shine, that guy's going to bring it. So who was that guy that?
Yeah, part of it would probably be, for me, the guy that was really kicking my ass, I was second, but I lost a lot too, was Mike Hazelwood. And in that day, he was by far the biggest, strongest jumper there was, right? And he had no fear. And so when you see somebody go late, he could go that much later. And so, it's kind of like when you had Andy, right? I mean, you've got to figure out a way to get around that.
You got to get better. Yeah,
right.
You got to get better because somebody else has already gotten better.
And so, I was already living and skiing with him at Jack Travers. And so I was seeing it every day. So that's how I had to learn some new techniques. That's how I ended up being so wide on the boat. That's how I had to overcome, I had a 30, 40 pound weight difference or more less and didn't have the strength. So how did I do it? But he was super tough for an extended period of time for me. Yeah.
Well, since we just talked about Mike, let's talk about, we talked about Bob briefly. Let's hear your thoughts on Bob Lapoint.
Well, I think, for me, Bob was like one of my heroes. Like, I could.
Same here. Same as you and Carl. Yeah.
Well, and I was like, when I was growing up, I could remember, seeing those guys. And when the Nationals were in Berkeley, did you go to
No, I was 77. I think my first Nats were 80.
Okay. So, it was in Berkeley, and I still lived in South Carolina. And Bob had actually come to South Carolina and ski with us a little bit one summer. And he always treated me super nice and very helpful. And we were friends for a long time when we were on tour. But my parents flew me out to San Francisco to Berkeley for a tournament before the Nationals so I could ski against the guy, Joe Cornell. He was the best jumper on the West Coast. So my dad's like, you need to go in the Lion's Den. Here's your ticket. Go out there and figure out what you got to do. And so I spent that weekend with Bob Lapoint, John Steinbush. John was a brutal jumper, man. He was tough. He was nails. And these guys were like my heroes. And so, he really helped me, kind of mentored me into the Pro Tour when, I wouldn't say Tiger Woods, but, a lot of the pros treated him disrespectful to start with because he was young, he was winning. They just, they were jealous. But now they all love him because he made them millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? Well, I was winning, and it was viewed kind of, hey, he hasn't served his time. He's still wet under his ears. He's too young, and so I had a guy that was my security guard protector in Bob who really took care of me and steered me down the right path. So I was very fortunate.
That's very cool. So let's we talked about him briefly. What comes to mind when I say Carl Roberge? And
well, like spent half our life together. How about that? I mean, same thing. I can remember hearing about the Roberge family living on the East Coast and
they were West Coast,
San Diego, and
then, man, no cell phones, no computers. You just hear about this legend from the
or
other
a magazine
coast.
shows up.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you hear about him win the regionals with some score.
Yes.
No, it was all this mythical stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, until you actually saw him in person.
Yeah. And so, the first time we all met, it's kind of like, I don't know, best I can recall, they were a little quiet and standoffish, I mean, I think their family unit was a lot like our family unit, mom and dad and the girls and Carl.
Everybody was committed.
They were all in it to win it, right? And the same token for us. And then along the way, obviously became great friends with Karen and Natalie, won the world championships with Karen, traveled the world with her, and Carl and I, we shared rooms at most world championships and international events. You know, we ate together, you know, shared a room, trained together. And then, you know, I don't know if it's so prevalent now, but, you know, when you trained in the same place all the time, you know, back then you were looking for other places to go ski just to change things up. So, you know, I saw you over at Carl's place, or Carl would come over and ski with me.
I used to come over to Bruce's place. The same. Just go, man, can I come and get a different look? I'm getting stale.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happens. You just kind of run into that wall. So, you know, Carl and I still talk. I just saw he's down in the Keys having a vacation right now. So, and Carmen, we hear from her every once in a while when they're into Orlando. So good friendship, tough competitor, not only an overall for the longest time, but, you know, it's, if you look at the sport of jumping, from start to finish, you would have to say, you know, Shaylander, good, big guy jumper. I trained him for 5 years, so, you know, but he's good. But Bob was an excellent jumper in his era, and then Carl was even better.
And another level better.
Well, and it's just that much harder, right? Because when you have his weight and his height, there was no cruise control. And so, you know, a driver, let's say, got me, and then he got Carl right after me. You know, that's a whole different beast. You know, I want more from the wakes to the jump. Carl needs more out of the hole because he's
if you didn't get it, you weren't going to get it.
Yeah. He can never make up for it. So, you know, it put a lot of pressure on the drivers too. I mean, he was a game changer for sure.
All right, last one on this, and we'll move on. Andy Mapple.
Yeah,
talk about golfing, but let's.
Yeah. No, we spent. You know, he was a very close friend for a long time, and we trained together. You know, I broke my hip, and I, you know, in Australia, unfortunately, I didn't end up with avascular necrosis, and so I didn't have to have a hip replacement or anything like so many of you guys have had to have. It was a pretty devastating injury, but in my like leading up in my rehab and trying to my record run, Andy and I bought weight equipment together. So we had our own gym in his warehouse over on, what's the lake now?
Yeah, no, right across the street from Hancock.
Exactly, Hancock, Lake Hancock. And so we worked out together for like probably 3 or 4 years straight, nonstop. And it was cool because we knew each other going way, way, way back. And obviously I was friends with Dina, and Camille and Dina had so many really tough competitions together, again, traveling the world. And, you know, if you think back then, you know, we were going to 18, 20 events wherever. So you needed friends, right? And so, again, close friends. And he quit jumping. So one crash in Australia, I think, fixed it for him.
Yeah, that was my, that was 85. It was my first trip to Moomba. Yeah. He still came back with a busted up eye.
Yes.
And like you could barely see out of, and it was a shoulder or a knee that something was busted. And he still, I think he won slalom before he pulls out of the tournament to go home. And I'm like, well, okay, this is going to be fun the rest of my life. You know?
Yeah, no, he was definitely the single, look, anybody who's in skiing knows, or you play tennis or golf, it takes a single mind, complete focus, or you're never going to get there. And that means stripping away things that you should do or you'd love to do or your family. And Andy was like laser point A to point B, and nothing was going to, get in the middle of that. So
we got a couple more topics, but one just came to my mind that I was like, man, I got to bring this up. Late 80s, early 90s, Delta Crown Room or Delta First Class on the way home on a Sunday night. Because I remember getting on in the late 80s when I wasn't sitting at the front of the plane. I had no status. You're like, no, dude, go to the back. And you get on after a beat down all weekend, and we're just talking about Mapple. So there's maybe Sammy in 1A and Mapple in 1B, and then maybe a Robert's sprinkled up the front. I'm like, so then there's me, Swanson, Clooney, Llewellyn's, all the losers that have already been in the Crown Room drinking while y'all have been at the podium, collecting your checks and doing all your autographs, and we're licking our wounds. So do you have any recollection of those days?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yes, I
Because
did.
I got to join the front of the bus. I mean, a few years later, I remember sitting there going, I feel like Sammy. I'm in the front. I got a beer, and all the other dudes are going to the back,
Yeah.
you know?
It's so funny when Sue was traveling with me, she would always like, don't look at my food. Like, this is terrible food, but I would I want to be in first class because it was better.
It was at least better. Yeah.
But I was never had enough, right? Especially on the way home. So I finished mine and she's like, just have it. Like, don't.
We even called it Delta chicken. That's it. That's what you got.
Yeah. I think it was so interesting. Jumping always was last on the pro tour, right? And it was summer with all the storms coming up. And obviously to get in and out of Orlando on Delta, pretty much you were going through Atlanta, right? I mean, they say if you're going to go to heaven, you're going to go through
hell.
Yeah, you're going through Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I, typically at the last event, I was in the final 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. And then it was just mad race to get to the airport to get on the plane, and I know there was so many times, we smelled so bad, right? We've been outside all day sweating and then the storms hit and then the plane stuck on the runway and then you get stuck in Atlanta and then your skis don't make it in. And, those were the days, but it was fun.
And then we'd leave again Thursday morning for the next one.
Exactly.
For years, that was your routine from like May 25th, the Masters was sort of Memorial Day. And then it was every weekend through August, right?
Nonstop. Yeah. And in my, everyone got into their own training routine. But for me, during that period, I was a member of Bay Hill Country Club and I lived in Windermere. So it's like, I don't know, 5-6 miles away from the lake where I was skiing. And so whatever time I got home on Sunday night, I don't even know why, but I would get up in the morning at like 6:30 and I could get the first tee time at Bay Hill and I'd get up and go play. If I had somebody to play golf with, I'd play, but it was like my one day to like unplug, decompress, no matter how tired I was. Monday I went and played golf at Bay Hill and then I worked out in the afternoon. And then basically that gave you Tuesday, Wednesday to fix your issues before you flew out on Thursday.
You had to sort of have a plan if you were going to make some changes and you had to execute in a hurry.
Well, if you think back then too, right? We all know slalom skis and how they react different in the cold water versus hot water and stuff. But, we were going to Europe 2 to 3 times during that period. So, we could have just left super swampy Shreveport, with water's 90 plus degrees. And then you're going to Princess or wherever where the water's 60 degrees.
Yeah. And the depth changes.
Yes.
As well. Yeah.
Not as many private lakes back then.
No.
Let's just say it was a little more open to the elements.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, so let's talk about your injuries near the end there, Chris. You talked about a crash. I remember seeing you. I'm gonna swear it was in Chicago.
Yes.
That it was sort of like one of those that it took a dent out of your body, not necessarily your psyche, but is that sort of that moment I'm remembering?
Yeah, I'll have to try to condense it down, right? But I had several injuries along the way. I didn't have that many jump crashes because I had a healthy respect, and I was more of a
and you could react.
Yes,
you had that ability to not pull the trigger maybe later than the best guy next to you.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with that. Yeah.
Okay.
So our daughter had just been born, and we had been in California for 4 weeks because Sue's from California, and then Marine World, maybe just different tournaments, and I stayed out there. And so the whole family, the 4 of us, flew to Chicago, and it was one of those deals where there was just a rogue wave right at the base of the ramp, and I basically got airborne off the wave, hit the ramp.
And it was a bad place to slalom. I couldn't imagine doing what you guys did.
It was dicey. And as a lot of the places, back then on the Pro Tour were, that's just the reality. It wasn't all, giggles for sure. But unbeknownst to me, when I crashed, I had a minor concussion. I was in the hospital.
Was it inner ear?
Yeah. So it like a car accident victim where your brain sloshes so hard inside its shell that it fractured one of my 3 inner ear bones. And that would have been late June, in that period. And so, it took me a few weeks to try to recover. And then I had a few lackluster performance, but the tour finals were coming up, and I flew to Ireland to the pro jump tournament over there, and I felt bad the whole time, and I almost crashed every round, which never happens. And I came home, and I had one day before I had to fly to Portland for the tour finals. And I know you remember that location. It was very
Blue Lake,
very rough, right? And I took Austin skiing, and at the time he was like 7 or 8, and I was dipping the skis in the water, and he shoved me from behind, and I did like a forward somersault into the water, just playing around, and I blacked out. And when I came to, I was on the bottom swimming into the mud, and I was just like, I could have drowned, and I went straight up and talked with Sue, and I'm just like, hey, something's wrong. But I had an Oakley golf outing in Portland, so I got on the plane the next day and flew to Portland. I played golf like terrible. Everything was going bad, right? And then when the first round, your inner ear controls your eye muscles, and I couldn't see, and I crashed. And so, long story short, I ended up coming home, and how I met my doctor is a whole nother story. But at the time, I had pretty exploratory ear surgery, and it worked, and my vision came back. I was in total bed rest for 4 weeks. I couldn't fly for 3 months. And the first day I went back slalom skiing, the repair blew. Basically, when I was going on the pro tour during that period, you might remember, like in the qualifying rounds, I was leading, 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet. And then in the finals, I just was horrible. And what I didn't know was that bone is full of fluid, and it has crystals around it, and that's your gyroscope that gives you your balance and equilibrium, and it also, your eyes control your depth perception. So in the mornings when I, like qualifying, I'd get up, and I was fine, and I would do great. But then as I was there all day long, whether it was signing autographs or sitting in the heat or whatever that could be, that fluid would drain.
Inflammation.
The fluid would drain down. So think of a cup half full of water sloshing around, and the crystals aren't in fluid, and all of a sudden they ended up figuring out my depth perception was off 10 feet. And in that time too, when I was slalom skiing, if I came through the wakes and I cleared my vision, trying to get spray out of my eyes, the buoy would jump and move. And so I was having the buoy moving, I was having, all these things going on, and I ended up having a second surgery that never fully worked. And so I was working through that, and right when I was finally coming back to my first pro tour stop on the Thursday morning, I was jumping, and because my depth perception was off, I wasn't ready to land, and I broke my ankle just by landing because I would, jammed it. And then, it just never was the same, unfortunately. I mean, I had 20 years as a pro, right? So, I'm most proud I was ranked number 1 either in jumping or overall for 17 out of 20 years. So I felt like I probably had another 4 or 5 years left in me. But when it comes to that, it's been a life-altering event. I've just learned how to live with it.
Well, yeah, when you just want to hang out with your kids, it's a little different than trying to win another water ski tournament.
Yes. Yeah,
exactly.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you remember that, because, that's probably one of the most hardest falls that I had. And who would have thought, like, your inner ear controls your eye muscle. I mean, no one knew. And unbeknownst to me, by flying so far to Ireland, all the pressure in the plane for so long just made it drain completely. And from that, I got ulcers and stuff because that fluid is corrosive. So it was just going straight into my stomach. It was just a litany of stuff. It's like, you can't make this shit up.
No, I certainly remember. So let's talk about one more thing. And it was sort of right at this point where you're having sort of physical stuff, is now all of a sudden the skis started changing. I hear some of the young guys go, man, I wonder how far Sammy would have jumped on the new skis.
Yeah.
And it's sort of different because it's so much different than when you jump. The boats themselves are much bigger. What do they have? Twice the horsepower and the torque. So the boat alone is going to give you an extra 20, 30 feet. They changed the angle of the ramp
exactly
to make it a lot less severe, making it easier, softer. And I mean, no offense to the guys jumping modern day, but it was the modern day jumping is a lot less violent, a lot less moving parts. They're riding these big long skis, and they're riding this diesel of an engine where you guys had to create all your own speed, all your own energy.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's, look, I have nothing but respect for any sport, and especially skiers. I look at the slalom technique everyone's using now. Completely, I don't get it, but I see it, right? And I was still skiing a little bit with Kyle and Marco, and I'm just like, no, just turn the cruise control off. I don't care, I couldn't adjust when I started skiing again. But I think the jumpers today, they have to be really great athletes in a different way because the skis are so big, right? And to tame those. And you see a lot of people, I think it hurts the sport of jumping that smaller skis aren't available for someone to really learn the right technique. So I think when you see a lot of these crashes and they're all very similar out the fronts, it's just with the rocker and the binding placement, they have to be super strong, super core strength. That said, I can tell you, I have no doubt in my mind that when you call it violent, the two key things there was the angle of the ramp. You couldn't see over the top of it, and it really was that impact was.
It was steep, much steeper than it is. They basically shallowed the angle out over the years.
Yeah. And then opening the angle of the ramp. I think those two things really changed the sport, and makes it easier to go further, regardless of what level you're at. Now, I do believe if you're a younger teenager or learning to jump, if you could learn, and Lucky Lowe, that's how he teaches, right? That's what Ricky did with his son. I gave him my last pair of jumpers that I had, and that's what he learned on. And he's just like Ricky's like, I don't want him to learn on these giant skis, And so the last pair, my world record was on 73.5, and then that year when I was trying to come back, I had a pair of 78s. And that was the longest. But I built it off the same rocker of the smaller skis. I think having the cruise control is been key, especially when you can develop your own setting. Yeah. You take out, you can build those into your strengths. So I have, I look at Freddie and just I'm amazed that he's done what he's done, as good as he is for so long. But I think that the way the jumping is now, I could just tell you that I doubt many skiers back from the 80s and 90s could jump that well, that long anymore. Wow. It's just different. Wow. So, but I hear that from a lot of people. Wow. And as a competitor, would I have liked to? Absolutely. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. It's just, but look, hey, records get broken, things change. I'm not one of those. I had to walk through a snowstorm just to get to school, but I look back and I go, okay, probably the two things in jumping I'm most proud of my entire career, beyond winning, beyond any of that, was developing that technique of really hard angle and turning from in front of the boat and landing in front of the boat, right? And then when I took the world record from whatever it was, 208 to 220, that weekend I went 213, 220. And again, there was just a few videos, but all of a sudden I started getting these calls and like, hey, I heard you had your left arm behind your back and your handle was inside your body cavity, and no one had ever seen that except Jack, I spent that time with Jack Travers and said, hey, we gotta
make refinements. Yes.
It's just like, how do we get to the next level? And you might remember a lot of people the following year were having shoulder injuries because they're jumping 90 feet and trying to put their arm behind their back and couldn't get it back around in time, and their arm gets dislocated, or I heard of plenty of things, but all those years of grinding out inches or a foot and then to pick up 12 feet was just like, okay, that changed. That's a game changer. You
can be done and be at peace then, right?
Yeah, it was good.
Hey, and on that note, we'll end. Thanks so much, Sammy.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough. It's been so enjoyable. So, hey, go to my website, skiwithwade.com. you'll be able to catch my merch, new gear, my HO gear is on there, my tour dates, and see you again soon. Wade's World, out.
See ya.
I kind of messed that up. Let's do that again.
Okay.
Hey guys, thanks again for joining us today. Check out my website, skiwithwade.com. We got merch, all kind of good merch, HO stuff, tubes, vests, gloves, all that stuff for your boat. My tour dates will be up, and any of these old podcasts will be up, so you can check it out. And thanks again, Sammy. We'll see you guys soon. Cut more rope.
Thank you.
That's a wrap this week for Ski with Wade podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to email me at wade@skiwithwade.com or direct message me on Instagram or Facebook with any questions you may have. We'll cut more rope next week. Ski with Wade.